Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 108, Small Biz 2.0.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Small Biz Life. We are so happy that you've joined us either again this week because you're a returning listener or maybe for the first time. Thanks for checking us out.
Yeah. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram. I'm a IT and task person.
And my name's Kristen Ingram. I am a CPA and a small business advisor. And between the two of us, we have about 30 years of experience working with small businesses. And so, today we thought it'd be kind of interesting to look at what we think the future of small business looks like.
Yeah.
So that way you can start thinking about how your business might be affected by disruptions in the market, or how you could get ahead of your competition in order to thrive in this environment.
I think this episode is going to be really good for people who are struggling with the future vision of their business and want to grow. But it's also, I think it would be a really good episode if you're thinking about starting a business. So if you also know someone who's pushing it around, make sure to get them this episode, share the link with them, show them how to start listening to the episode so that they can have a sort of leg up as they start too. Because I think it would be really useful in either position.
Right, absolutely. So, I think we kind of need to start by talking about why the landscape keeps changing or why it's changing especially fast right now. And I think people don't just want to shop, right? Because there's so many options for shopping now that, or even options for services that people are no longer thinking local.
No.
And so if you are a local business or even if you're an online business, there is so much competition out there. And I think that a lot of times we think, people have to shop, they have to do this type of business locally.
That's a shrinking thing, and it's going to continue to shrink. They're going to continue to be more disruptions, between technology and basically AI, robots. I mean, a lot of stuff's really coming into place to where, for a couple different reasons, it's going to become more competitive. And I think the other big reason is the replacement of traditional line workers is going to displace more people out of the traditional workforce. A lot of those people are going to be looking towards small business to try and keep their family moving forward, which is going to make it difficult. And then beyond that, because of technology as well, the easy ability for you to reach out into the world and to grab people's attention and do business all over the world today also allows people all over the world to come and do business in your yard.
So a couple things that I want you to be thinking about and maybe being proactive about. First, if you are in any sort of field that is licensed, make sure you understand what you can and cannot do outside your local jurisdiction. And you need to start really pushing either your state society, your state association, or you need to be talking to your representatives about how this landscape is changing. I'm thinking about things like lawyers, things like licensed counselors, CPAs. We really need to be proactive in saying, listen, the landscape is changing. We can have clients all over the country. You are hurting my ability to generate revenue. And if you don't make this better, I am going to move to a state that will allow me to do this, because there are states that are very proactive that are helping their licensed professionals be able to do business across state lines.
I think you need to become a bigger advocate for yourself on many fronts. You need to make sure your state has a sensible and simple system for you to be taxed. So, irregardless of how much you pay, you need it to be simple. Whether it's sales tax, which can be exceptionally complicated, the more jurisdictions that you start to deal with, the more complicated these questions become. And a lot of these states looking for revenue, instead of making it simpler and just increasing the amount, they're trying to be clever. And the problem is, as they're being clever, trying to do stuff to pass things to get more revenue in, they're making it more expensive for you to do business. And that alone is going to be something else that adds more pressure, more difficulties for your business going forward. Plus, hey, if you're a retailer, you better really think about what you're doing in the next 10 years, because it's going to get a lot more difficult if you have an on-ground store. Mm-hmm. And guess what? You think going online is going to save you? Not necessarily. It's not enough anymore.
Right, exactly. So we're going to kind of talk about some things that small businesses are doing, that even larger businesses are doing, to kind of show, there's so much dichotomy in what's going on that it's not like everybody's following the same path. Yeah. In fact, some retailers, like Starbucks, has decided that they are no longer going to sell online. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think about that for a second, everybody else is pushing to go online, and Starbucks has said, no, if you want the Starbucks experience, you need to come into our store, which they're getting a lot of backlash on, because people are saying, well, wait a minute, you sold us, these wonderful espresso machines and, these coffee making systems, and we're buying your syrups and buying your coffees online, and now you're saying, no, you can't even buy those anymore. Yeah. So I think it's really interesting. It's a very dramatic shift. And I don't know that that's going to work for them.
Yeah, no, neither do I, because, I understand the strategy, but especially they went all in online. And that's a slap in the face of your customer base. And yeah, they're not coming to the stores anymore, but they're still sending you revenue, and it's probably a higher profit revenue as well. And not that I have anything against people being stores, but to make a big push one way and then to dramatically shift course, it's difficult. It upsets your client base, and when you do that, you risk hurting your business.
Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing a lot of today is a lot of blurring of the lines.
Yeah.
So people don't just want to go to a store, right? They want an experience. And so when we're looking around at successful retail, okay, if you are a knitter, Webb's. Webb's has a huge online presence. They have a store in Northampton, Massachusetts. Knitters I talk to, they call it the knitting mecca, okay? And it's interesting because we were just there a couple weeks ago, and they have a map of not only the United States, but they have a world map, and they ask you to put in push pins from where you're from. Yeah. There are pins from all over the world. Yeah. Because it is destination knitting store.
Yeah, if you're from New England, it'd be very hard to even get a pin in around where you live at this point. As you get further out, though, there's still plenty of room for those pins.
But the thing is, they've created a destination space. They do a lot of classes there where they're multi-day classes, so people will come up for like a week and stay and shop. I've seen people during like their annual sales that people buy shopping carts full of yarn. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I know people that I've talked to who have flown in to shop there, that they bring extra luggage with them just to bring their yarn home. It is a real destination shopping location. I think another one is King Arthur Flour up in Vermont. They have a beautiful baking store, and that is somewhere like people who are bakers will actually travel there on vacation to take a class and to shop there.
Yeah, Yankee Candle's another one, and I'm sure there are businesses like these probably around where you live.
Loveless
too.
Cafe in Nashville.
Loveless Cafe is a destination restaurant. I think you've seen that even more in the restaurant space probably than, with all of these traveling food shows. It really gives a platform and an ability for restaurants to launch and to become a destination kind of place. The thing to keep in mind is we've already seen the ability to really niche online. And we think this is going to start spreading more offline to where you're going to have more focused areas. And I think Webb's is a great example here because they're very much around a certain the fabric side of crafting.
The knitting side of
the
crafting.
knitting side. Well, and crochet.
Yeah.
So-
and they do some weaving and stuff like that. Yeah, those.
But it's all around that one vein of crafting. Now, I don't think you can buy like fabric for dresses there or anything like that.
Nope.
But it's a very niche business. But the thing is, they're exceptionally successful because one, they can provide very deep knowledge when you go in. I know my wife was looking for stuff for to knit for our upcoming baby, and the people there are very smart. And if they don't have the answer, they got the one answer that they didn't have off the top of their head. She got in just a couple minutes because she knew enough to know where to go. And that's a thing where like big box stores are starting to struggle with. So I think small businesses have a real opportunity if you can get people with knowledge into your locations. It actually puts you on a better footing than most large competition because they have such a wide breadth of things that they deal with. They don't have, unless it's lucky at that moment of time, they don't have the knowledge in those areas to support it.
Well, and I think, a business like Webb's, one of the things I think they do really well is I think a lot of small businesses have this issue where people will come into the store to hang out or to seek out knowledge and then they don't buy. One of the things that Webb's has become very good at is they will help you put together everything that you need for the project. And if you spend over a certain amount of money on yarn, the yarn becomes discounted, which means that it is very competitive with anything else that you find online. But you have to buy, you're spending like $100 on yarn in order to get that discount.
I think there could be a tough line coming between a hangout place, which is fine if you're a Starbucks, right? Because people are very likely to buy stuff from you as they're hanging out because you have these small inexpensive drinks. But coming from my geek background, I've seen a lot, where I've known people who've owned stores, or a lot of the gaming and comic book stores around me have gone out of business. And it's not because there aren't people, there's probably more people than ever who are into that kind of stuff. But the problem is, they have tables for people to go play at, but it's not set up in a system in which to sell to people. It's set up in a system for people just to hang out. And unless you have stuff to try and make money that way, your quick, easy impulse buys, maybe frozen burritos if you're a game shop. I'm not sure. But,
Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets. But, if you don't have a way to generate revenue off of the traffic there, if you don't have a system in place to try and convert the foot traffic of people hanging out into purchases, you're just going to go out of business.
And that's where I think you find, some of the smaller craft stores that are surviving, they're actually, they have things where, hey, you can come in and get help on your project, but you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So on Friday nights, you can come in for 2 hours and it's $10 and we'll have water and some cookies and stuff, but, it's $10 to come in. At least it's helping to pay for the space, even if people don't buy anything. And a lot of those places, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, if you pay the $10 admission, we will give you that $10 off anything you buy that night.
Yeah.
So it kind of incentivizes you to come in, knit, and then if there's stuff you need, you're going to get that money back off your purchase.
And I think that's maybe a good way for places to deal with it because, it's like the game and comic book shops that survive were the ones that got into the card games because the card games, people would have the packs there and it's very easy to buy more of these packs to make better decks to win more of these games. But the ones that focus on other types of games where it's board games or it's role-playing games where it's less things that you have to purchase to make it in the activity, there's less ways to generate revenue. So, you need to balance a model to where people are in the space and you have a way to generate the revenue or else you're going to get burned.
Right. And that's where, kind of moving on to the next point, it's important to have, formal and informal training that you're charging for, and even like conference space, right? You're trying to make it so that online customers are going to come see you.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be converse too, because I do think what you're going to start seeing is your bigger online like personalities, like your Brendon Burchards, are going to start having some kind of co-working space kind of things to where you can be in the area maybe with their people or in the same building and have a chance to interact with some of their people, or other things along the lines where it's people can come to you, and some of them do it already at a very expensive level with like masterminds and stuff like that. I think it's going to start encroaching in on like you have co-working spaces with online personalities behind them.
Right. And if you kind of think, one of the things I think that Webb's and King Arthur Flour do really well is, when somebody comes out with a new book, whether it's a cookbook or a knitting book, instead of having a signing like at a Barnes and Noble, they're going to Webb's, or they're going to King Arthur Flour, because they know that those venues can, have incredible email lists and drive a lot of people in.
Yeah. I think that's a smart way for most small businesses. If you extend out to customers on the back end, if you have an effective marketing platform set up, start using that, because one, the people that come in will help propel your ability to market in the future. But if you can show them that you have a certain base already, it's like being a magazine or being a television show, that will attract in the bigger people. So the bigger people you get, the larger your marketing becomes, and the more you can drive in the kind of traffic who might also buy stuff beyond that.
Yeah, but I've been to book signings at Webb's that have had hundreds of people
I believe
show
it.
up.
Yeah, I believe it, because Webb's can drive the people, which brings in the personalities, which grows their ability to bring in more people.
Yeah. So, kind of think about like, how can you, no matter, every niche has authors.
Yes.
Every niche has, celebrities and personalities. How can you build up your email list and build up your traffic so that you can, contact one of those people and say, hey, listen, if you're ever in my area, I've got an email list of 5,000 people who would love to meet you. Would you be interested in doing a book signing, do, some sort of talk, whatever. And you could even, you could charge people if it's going to be like a talk. If it's a book signing, clearly they're going to make money off the sale of the books. But, you can do something like that to bring notoriety to your location. So I kind of want you to think about that. Like, how can you make that work?
And that's also, too, when you scale and start to blur those lines where it's like, let's say you order 500 books for a book signing and 300 people buy books, you still have the online space to try and offload those books. So you don't necessarily have to, throw them onto the shelves out in the store and use up shelf space in the store either. So, like I said, I think a lot of energy is going to start coming into better and different ways to hybrid your business, and the good thing is most of these authors, most of the people who are, either internet celebrities or celebrities who are in these spaces are looking for venues, and there's a lot of people they typically want. So even if you can't get in big names now, can you get in like, your tier 2 celebrities or your tier 3 celebrities, people with somewhat of a base. And once you start building up, you'll then be able to outreach to larger and larger personalities.
Absolutely. And even if it's, you could do like a new and noteworthy, author series that, hey, these are people that we think are up and coming. They don't really have, a huge following yet, but you could be one of the first people, And so, I mean, there's ways that you can do this even with smaller authors, I think. And, it's
and a
great way to build your business.
Like I said, you could be a hardware store, a kitchen supply store. There are people out there.
Yep, absolutely. But I think, the thing is what people are looking for is they're looking for knowledge, right? The thing that is going to separate you and your business from, Amazon and Barnes and Noble and these,
Walmart,
Walmart is that you have knowledge. When I go into Webb's, the people in there are passionate about knitting and they're passionate about helping you with that. When you go into like a local comic book store, people that work there are passionate about these things and they will help you find new comics. And
I guarantee you, when you go to comic book stores, the people who are there want to work there. When you go to Webb's, the people want to work there. The more niche, the more unique it is, the more people who are passionate in your niche will be attracted to work for you. So when you do need to expand and grow, it actually is easier for you because you probably have people who come to try and get jobs with you.
Exactly. Okay, so, consider if you're doing events, consider having an online and an offline experience. So, some things that have, some places we've seen it's done really well. Podcast Movement had a virtual ticket that you could get.
See a lot of conferences starting to do this now.
A lot of conferences are doing this, which is great because if you attend, you can't possibly go to all the sessions. But they've got, but you can. Now you can. Now this is something that's probably very expensive to set up, right? Because you need lots of equipment, you need lots of people in order to film everything. Well, like if you have a store event, you can live stream that event.
Your store launch, do a redesign a year and live stream it, whatever it is.
But the thing is too is like, so kind of, what Jeff was thinking about those extra books. Imagine if you have somebody come in who does a talk about their book and then does a book signing. You can say, hey, listen, if you order your book, within the next 20 minutes, we will get this person to sign the book and we'll send it to you.
Yeah.
But you have to order by, 1 o'clock. So that's a cool way to use live streaming to say, listen, I know you're not here, you can't be in line, but if you order by this time, we'll make sure your book gets to you signed.
Because we love you. And if you're ever in the area, stop by the store.
Exactly, right? So that's kind of a way that you can bring your online audience into an event that they can attend. So I think that's pretty neat. And maybe you say, hey, it's only for the first 20 people who order, 50 people who order, put a cap on it. Because then the problem is that you might get people go, oh, well, I don't need to go and I can still get my book signed, So you're probably going to want to have to put a cap on that. Try to get participation from the online people. So if you're doing a Q&A, try to get questions in from the folks who are watching online as well.
Yeah.
I see a lot of businesses, especially kind of in the craft space, but even going back, it's funny because I'm thinking in the geek space now, when new comic books come out or when it's, National Comic, Free Comic Book Day, I'm not seeing the stores do a lot with streaming. I'm not seeing them do a lot with online.
No.
To get people in. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity if you're doing a trunk show or you're launching a new product, do a red carpet launch that is online and in person. Stream the trunk show. It's super easy to do this now.
Use your phone. I mean, you don't need special equipment for this kind of stuff, and people aren't expecting it because right now it's newer. So you have a chance to play around without having to put in a lot of money up front to be in an existing space.
But that's the thing, if you're doing, if you're doing a fashion show, if you're doing a new product release, whatever it is, have it in your store, but then also show it online.
Yep.
And hey, if you're doing, even if you're strictly an online business, if you're not doing these live event type of things, you need to start doing them because it's going to bring more excitement in. Use Facebook events in order to, schedule it ahead of time and let people know that it's happening.
And you focus on building up a base around you, and maybe you're starting off by filling a library room, in the town that you're in. Maybe you can start building up events, live events actually on ground, around where you're going to be. And if you have enough fan base, if you can bring in enough people to get some people in the room, or if you, have trusted people you like, do stuff for you as well. If you're big enough, you can start launching out and creating more excitement and more buzz. I know Russell Brunson just did that brilliantly with his new YouTube video release.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are a strictly offline business, you are really going to struggle because millennials want to see you online as well as in person.
And I think too, if you stay strictly online, there's going to be a lot more people in that space. That's going to become more difficult as well too. You're going to see a growth of individuals in these spaces.
I mean, this is the thing that's really tough because I think that there are certain niches where it is very difficult to not have, where I think it's very difficult to not have an on-ground brick and mortar presence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. I'll tell you, so being pregnant and looking for maternity clothes is like the selection online is phenomenal. In the stores, it's awful. And it's like, but I need to like try it on and see if it fits because I have a funky body type anyways. And so I need to try on clothes, and it's like, you can't do that. I gotta say for me with knitting, like I'm very textural. I need to feel the yarn and see what it feels like. But once I'm familiar with a yarn, then I can buy it online. And I think that there's a lot of different niches like that where you want to go touch it, feel it, try it on, before you're willing to buy online. I know a lot of people with like grocery shopping, they won't grocery shop online because they want to touch the produce. They want to pick it out by hand. So, so I think it's kind of interesting, but I know, from doing research and from talking to my students in class, they don't want to deal with people when they shop.
No.
It's really funny if they've actually done studies that say that if millennials have the choice between standing in line at self-checkout or no line with a cashier, they'll stand in line at self-checkout and wait because they don't want to deal with people.
Well, I'm not quite that bad. I'm definitely, if I know what I'm looking for and I know what I want, the less people I have to deal with to get it, the better. If I don't know what I want or I'm confused or I have questions, I want to go in some place where people can answer my questions.
Right. And that's kind of a really interesting balance that, we need to work on as small business owners is you want to be helpful, you want to be there, you want to be knowledgeable, but younger people want to be left alone when they're shopping. They will come to you if they have a question. And so the way that we deal with customers kind of has to change. So kind of keep that in mind. And even, I'll tell you on websites, if I go to a website and like the second I get there, a little chat box pops up and it's like, hi, do you have a question? We can answer your question. Do you need help with a question? That drives me crazy.
Yep.
And
I'm going to tell you too, if you don't have millennials, doing business with you now and you plan to be in business in 10 years from now, you better start looking for new ways to approach them. That's more and more of the money is going to be coming from that segment of the population. That's where the growth is coming from. And more and more baby boomers are getting to the point where, that generation is starting to pass away. So you need, if you're planning to stay in business for another 10 years, you need the millennials in your space.
But, it's funny because like a lot of people thought knitting was, that was for old ladies. I'd probably say maybe 15 years ago. And then all of these younger knitters started coming out with really cool patterns and really cool books. And, there's this whole movement, this whole like stitch and bitch movement where, you'd go hang out with your friends and knit at a coffee shop. And it became this really hip thing. And it's funny because even now when you go to knitting stores, the demographic is much younger than it was when I started knitting. Like I said, I've been probably knitting for probably about 15 years, I think. But it's kind of interesting if the younger generation is not interested in what you do, how do you make that interesting for them? Yeah. How do you get them? DIY is huge right now. And if millennials aren't in your niche yet, if you're into something DIY, how do you make it cool? How do you make it fun so that they want to get involved in it?
Yeah, the thing, you have to keep in mind is ultimately, one of the reasons why business always changes, besides technology, besides the obvious stuff, is people change. Their needs change, their wants change. And their wallets are the most effective tools at changing the landscape of business.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. So, if you're not following like, how millennials spend money, how they behave, how they shop, even things like, the way that millennials eat is much different than the way older generations eat. Millennials want things that are either handheld or do not require things they have to wash because they don't want to do dishes, right? There are more important things to do, but they also don't want to waste a lot of packaging either. So things that they can drink, they love smoothies, they love power bars, because minimal packaging, but I don't need silverware. So, even the food space is going to be changing.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of watch, if your product has excessive packaging, that might turn people off. So kind of things to think about. So another thing that we have to think about, and these are like all businesses and especially service-based, because I think we think that we're safe, but there's going to be so much more competition as people go online for services. And so you've got to think about, no longer is, if you're an entrepreneur counselor or you're a small business advisor, you're not limited to your local audience anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things where we did some research. There'll be some links in the show notes about this. Counseling is an area of great growth, and you're going to see more of that going. That's something that can happen online, especially to people who are in remote places. That might be their only option, and you could target those kind of people and get to them. And I think too, for your typical, your old fashioned online coaches, are a lot of times people who have a lot of maybe experience dealing with certain circumstances, but not necessarily a formalized process. I think, you're going to see a blending of actual counselors with those kinds of things as well too. And that's more predictive of me. That's more being a futurist. But I think you're going to see a blending, and it's going to be more difficult to be a coach online. Well, one, there's a lot of people who want to be coaches anyway. But as the counselors move in with credentials, they're if they start noticing that there's a way for them to move a little bit and focus on businesses or focus on life and do those kind of things, they're going to start doing that, and it's going to become like an escalating war of credentials, I think, in that space.
But again, a lot of states will not allow online counseling.
Yeah.
So if you are a licensed counselor, you need to know what your state allows you to do. Because a lot of times, especially if you're in high risk counseling, I was talking to a friend about this a couple weeks ago. Let's say somebody, you have a meeting with somebody and they're suicidal. You have to report, but you have to know where they are in order to be able to report. So what happens if they're in their car and they're driving around while they're talking to you? You don't know where they are, and so a lot of states, they don't know how to deal with this yet. And so, counseling is one. I know law is very difficult. Finance. Those poor finance folks it's unbelievably rigid. What you can, but it's funny though, because, if you're in finance, and I'm talking about like your licensed financial planners and things like that, typically you have to send all of your marketing materials to an office to approve them. Whereas you've got people that are like, hey, I've made some money trading in the stock market. I'm not licensed, but I'll show you how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's really sad if you're in one of those professions that's heavily regulated, you need to be making a case for why you need more leeway. Because the problem is you have all these unlicensed people who are running around who might not have as much knowledge as you do, but they're growing these huge followings. And, I'm just waiting for the day that like people get like, really bad advice from one of these gurus. And, and maybe at that point they'll be.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, though. I think in the next 10 years, you're going to start seeing those kinds of things starting to break down. Because the people who use the licenses to protect their jobs, when the money's online, they want to be there, and they're going to be pushing back. They typically have political leverage in their state. Their groups do already. So, when the groups start waking up to it, and right now you have an older generation in the leadership of those groups, but especially as the next generation starts to take over those groups, you're going to see an increasing push to break down those barriers in those industries. And
right.
When they do, if you're in that space on the other side, and you use the school of hard knocks as your thing, it's going to be tougher because you have a lot more competition at that point.
Right. So that's the thing is like, I think, if you're, like I said, if you're not involved with your state society or, you're not meeting your politicians, that's something that you really need to do. Because the problem is, I think as small business owners, we say we're too busy. And then all of these laws get passed that affect our businesses. And we go, wait, what the hell just happened? Wait. Okay.
Or worse, you find out the hard way.
So that's the thing. We have to be more involved as small business owners because the only way that laws are going to change, especially at the state level, is if we get involved.
Yeah.
So, I think that's huge. I think, I agree with Jeff. I think the expert space is going to explode as more people lose their jobs to AI and to robots.
Yeah. Like I said, I came from what they would call line of business software development. So we create software that would help the businesses we work for perform a certain function within the business. WordPress developers, it's not a space I'd want to be in. I'm sorry if you're not liking me saying that. Unless you're a cutting edge developer, probably in the next 20 years, you're going to lose a lot of work. The apps coming out now are getting better and better. The systems, the Kajabis, the ClickFunnels are coming out. These are all work that you're losing, and that's going to increase.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's, I think that, there's always going to be some need, because even people who use Kajabi are looking for people to help them. People who, are using ClickFunnels are looking for people to help them. But they're much fewer people. That's the thing. If, I can get a Kajabi site up and running in probably 35 minutes from start to finish.
Yeah, but I think it'll be one a little bit more design focused and not developer focused. And for developers, you're going to be hired to do I need my Kajabi site to be able to do this. And I don't want to spend a lot of time manually doing it. Make it work this way.
Right.
And that's where you're going to see the work. It's not going to be putting together portals for people or websites for people or designing, a WordPress site for them or your own PHP thing that you've put together. It's going to keep moving away from that because the cost to hire to do that is so much more than paying, $94 a month to Kajabi.
Right. And here's the thing, and even if you're a CPA right now, or you are an enrolled agent or you're a tax preparer, if this tax proposal goes through, you are going to see your business plummet. Because individuals, for the most part, are no longer going to need you to do their taxes.
They're not going to get to the level they even could itemize for the few items that are still left out there.
Right. So that's the thing. So, that's why probably 5 years ago, I said, I'm really going to focus on small businesses. Because even if the code is simplified, small businesses are still going to need to track all their income and expenses. They're still going to need to know what they can deduct. They're still going to need help growing their businesses. And so basically the only individuals I do right now are individuals I will do somebody's mom's tax return.
They have a business or they're connected to a business that you work with.
Right, exactly. Or sometimes I do my clients' kids' tax returns. But I'm not doing tax returns where there's no Schedule C on the return, or there's no rental property on the return. Because though I knew that at some point, Congress would get their act together or try to, and we would see that they would simplify the tax code. And is this going to pass? I don't know. Ben Stein gave it 80% the other day. So, and I respect him a lot. But if this passes, if you're just doing individual returns, I would say that you are probably going to lose at least 30 to 40% of your clients. And I think once they figure out how easy it is the second year, you're going to see another big drop. So, you've got to find a way to say, okay, and I've been telling CPAs this for years, and even lawyers, you can't just be a form filler. You have to add value. You have to be a trusted advisor.
That's another reason why the expert space will be growing, because it's not just people trying to become experts or your next online gurus, but the thing is you need to provide more value to people because of the increasing competition. And being an expert, being the person to give out the knowledge, even if you're not trying to make money off the knowledge you're giving out, you're trying to attract the business to make the money. So it'll be from one of those two perspectives, but that is what will drive the expert space to explode.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot more AI and automation, and they will be your first touch employees for many businesses. Yeah. We're seeing this with Facebook Messenger automation. We're seeing this with chat box automation on websites. I would imagine that probably in 10 years, when you go to fast food restaurants, you are going to order at a kiosk.
And I'm telling you, developers, in 5 years, you're going to have really good apps to make pretty good, serviceable chatbots. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't rely on making things that people use consistently anymore. Those are typically, if it's systematic in how they're made, you know, it's going to be a period of time, and they're going to become automated. So,
and I think it was interesting because we were at Moe's last night eating dinner, and you know, we'd gotten there a little bit early, so we're seeing a lot of people that are getting off of work and they're picking up food. The more people than not were coming in who had already ordered off the app and were just picking up their food.
Those are less people working in that store.
Right. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's the thing. It's, you know, you've got to be thinking about how you can make those transitions even in your own business. Mm-hmm. You know, so how can you use automation and AI to decrease your costs? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like for us, you know, we don't have a social media manager for the business because a lot of what we do, we just switched over to RecurPost, and everything is loaded into RecurPost. It automatically recycles stuff. We don't have to, you know, we can look at the schedule really easily and see if we want to change anything.
It's not optimal, but you know, for the difference in cost,
right.
It's a lot cheaper than a social media manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you got to kind of think about those kind of things and how can you use tools to run your business more efficiently. You know, I don't email invoices, or I don't mail invoices anymore. All my invoices go out via email. My customers are paying online. That streamlines a huge part of my accounting firm.
Which is one of the reasons also why it's so easy for you to do your accounting, because if it's all going through online, it's easier to get that into your accounting software, and it's easier for you to make money.
So think about those things. You know, you're going to see more remote employees and more remote contractors.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about it, right, I'm really a contractor for small businesses, right, as an advisor. I've got clients all over the country. You know, I know a lot of small businesses that they, you know, I mean, even funny for our business, it's like we have a web designer in Tennessee, we have an editor in Texas, you know, we have people, you know, one of our graphic designers is in California. We're using people all over the country to do work for us.
Yeah, and you know, and so part of that too goes into part of its personality, finding the person that you work well with, who you can see their work and see the benefit of the work. The nice thing is, once again, it makes it more. You can be a bit more choosy at this point, but over time, as more people start looking to do the same thing, it's going to become more competitive for people all over the place. Which in some places, like where they've lost a lot of their businesses, will be very beneficial for. But other places where there are more businesses, you know, that are still centrally located, they might start having shortages with employees. You're going to start seeing this battle for employees hopefully start to pick up, and wages will hopefully follow that.
And that's, I think, one thing I think that states are not being cognizant of is states are not sitting there going, wait, you know, like, for example, like me, okay? I could relocate my CPA firm anywhere in the country. I could, you know, we could relocate Ingram Digital Media anywhere in the country. And we live in a high tax state. And, you know, our governor and our legislature thinks, well, you have to, if you're, you know, this type of business, you have to be here because that's where your customers are.
Nope.
And that, I just need somewhere that has good high-speed internet. That's basically all I need. You know, these states need to wake up and realize that the workforce is much more mobile and small business is much more mobile than it has ever been.
And I think, and you're starting to see a movement, you know, the nomad movement, you know, coming around where there are people who are itching to be more mobile. And you know what? With technology, it's possible.
And that's the thing, you know, and, you know, but the thing I want you to think about, if you are hiring remote employees, if you are hiring remote salespeople, if you have affiliates, if you are a digital nomad that is moving all over the country, you need to talk to an accountant who understands the way multi-state taxation works to make sure that you are not creating presence in many, many, many states. Okay. which will make you subject to sales tax in many states and which will make you subject to income tax in these states. So you're going to want to talk to somebody when you start looking at, hey, I want to hire employees out of state, affiliates out of state. You need to talk to somebody because you could be creating huge tax headaches for yourself down the road.
And, I think, something else we have to talk about too here is a bit of cybersecurity. With Equifax being out there, the Sonic breach, we're hearing more and more of these breaches coming around. And the thing we have to understand is we see the big name ones. We see the Equifaxes. What we don't see are the small shop ones. There's going to be an increase because it's less risk for a criminal overall to commit crimes virtually. There's a lot less enforcement. It's harder to enforce. So you're going to see more criminals who are trying to steal worry about either hacking sites, blackmailing companies, putting in swipe devices on credit card machines. So it could be offline, like you don't typically think of a credit card machine online, and they can attack you from inside of your own store by adding equipment to your infrastructure. You have to be more cognizant of your security. It's going to get worse in that area.
Well, and even think of this, think about, is there any sensitive information that is currently sitting in your email box? This could be something as simple as, you are an affiliate for someone and they asked you to fill out a W-9 and email it to them. So your possibly social security number, if you don't have an EIN, is sitting in your sent box.
Well,
and if your email gets hacked,
you don't need to, because once you've emailed it, you've sent it open air.
Right, but if somebody hacks your email,
yes,
right, and goes through, your social security number is sitting in your mailbox.
Yes, let's say you have a Yahoo account.
Right, which every single Yahoo account was breached.
Only like 3 billion.
But I think a lot of times we don't think about what we are sending people via email or what we're asking people to send us via email.
Yeah, we need to be better, at what we send email, because email is clear. So if someone sees something in transit, if they have like a node that they've hacked, they can actually view everything that goes through there. So you need to look more about securely moving documents online, and because one, it just protects the people you're working with, and it protects you, because sending that stuff via email is dangerous, and it's good. And like she said, it's probably going to stay in your sent email forever. Because do any of these places charge you for your sent emails? And they just keep a massive amount of things in that sent email. Who knows? If you sent a W-9 online, 4 years ago from Yahoo, they maybe got it from your sent box.
Yeah. So I think, as small business owners, we need to be looking at the data that we have for people and how are we managing that data? Are we managing it securely? So kind of think about those things. And that's why I'm a huge fan. Make sure you have an EIN for your business. Because I think, it's funny. I'm much more likely to email our EIN to somebody than email my social security number to somebody, because the EIN, I know I can change it. So, just kind of beware of those things, the kind of data that's sitting in your inbox.
I think too, and we started to see this over the past 10 years with the growth of movement businesses, your podcast movements. Everyone has their Fire Nation or it's lots of nations out there. Everyone has their own little nation, and those are nifty and they're good for one personality type of businesses. But it's going to be harder to hold a customer base because people can get to other competition so easy, which is why you've started to see the movements start to come up in business. But I think what you're going to start seeing is more communities coming up. To where it's not so much about one of the personalities, but it's going to be about a collection of businesses or the business and their customers together as one, instead of the leader and all of the followers.
Well, the thing is, and we kind of, we've talked about pieces of this before, but, if you are not providing value, if you don't have knowledge, in retail, the easier it is for somebody to switch to a competitor, the harder you have to try to keep your base.
Yeah.
The more you need to do to keep them. Because, if I can go to, if I can go to Best Buy or I can go to Home Depot and buy what I need and I don't need access to knowledge, then why do I need my local, my little Radio Shack or my local Ace Hardware? It's the fact that you can help me with my questions. That's kind of always the complaint about, the big box stores, right? Is that people don't have the knowledge. If you are a small retail establishment and you aren't displaying the knowledge either, why to go to you? I might as well go to Home Depot and save some money. It's okay to charge premium pricing, but with that has to come premium customer service, premium value, premium knowledge. And if you're not displaying that, you're not going to survive.
And I know too, we've talked a little bit about, along with this, things are going to become more competitive. And in a lot of ways, people think that workers are going to suffer. I think with the growth of small businesses, workers are going to do better because they're going to have more opportunities and more virtual opportunities. One of the things you might want to consider going to the forward, one of the reasons why it's important to understand the parts of your business is it's going to be more difficult to find someone with an appropriate college education for what you want them to do. And sometimes if there's licensing required, you're going to have to live with that unless the licensing laws change. But in areas that there aren't licenses involved, IT people, most fields, you don't have a required education component. You're probably going to look more at being able to identify people who have the aptitude and training them on the job to be able to do the work for you. And where it'll probably save you some money up front. You'll get better skilled workers, hopefully make you more money, and hopefully some of that will get passed along to the worker ultimately.
Well, and I think too, and I see this a lot like in the online space, and I don't know why I'm not seeing it in like the local space. Nobody has ever asked me where I went to school, what degrees I have. I've never asked a graphic designer, so do you have a 4-year degree? What is that degree in? I want to know, are you good at what you do? But we're still seeing, like, for local hiring, people want to know what degrees you have, where did you go to school, and they're not looking at the skills that people have.
But you're starting to see that changing a bit. You're starting to hear more about apprenticeship programs coming back, and I think that kind of movement's going to grow.
But that's the thing. It's like, so, if you are in a space where you can have a portfolio, you need to have one. Whether you are a crafter, a graphic designer, a web designer, anything where you can build a portfolio, you should do it. Because people are going to be looking more at what you've done rather than what credentials you have. And also make sure, it's funny because we actually talk about this in HQ a little bit this month. Make sure you have a good LinkedIn profile, and if you're not sure how to do that, seek out someone who does, or think about joining HQ this month. Because it's something that's really important to make sure that you have these, profiles for people to find you. Okay. Especially people are going to be looking at you all over the world potentially. So we hope that this kind of gave you some things to think about. Okay. Jeff's going to have a whole bunch of links in the show notes for episode 108. You can go to smallbizlife.com and click on podcasts and the show notes for episode 108. Got anything else?
No, that is it for me.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. And, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with somebody. If they don't know how to listen to a podcast, show them how.
Yeah, just takes a moment.
Because the only way podcasting is going to grow is if for those of us that are rabid about podcasts, share them with other people.
Yeah. And it is growing. So like not sharing it with your friend is like hurting them.
Exactly.
It's like hurting them.
So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
This was Small Biz Life.